Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high, and today I'm going to dive into the reasons why it is going to double extremely quickly, and on top of it all, why that doesn't break your favorite models, even though I think the models are extremely bearish and not taking in a lot of factors that we're going to go over today. But first, let's dive into this old clip from Anthony Pompliano talking about just how quickly Bitcoin doubles after hitting an all-time high.
If we go back and we look at past record high breaks, or if we eclipse the old all-time high, 3 of the 4 times Bitcoin doubled in 18 days or less. And so if you think about that for a second, once you break through an all-time high, it's price discovery. What is this thing worth? The world is going to try to figure that out. And 3 of the last 4 times in 18 days or less, it doubled in price. You add in the fact that we have the halving coming, and we're going to go from 900 Bitcoin a day coming into the supply to 450. And it's very hard to make an argument that Bitcoin is not going much higher and at a faster pace than we all expected.
So Anthony Pompliano is lining it out here exactly why I think that Bitcoin is going to go even higher. But I mentioned this at the beginning, right? Everybody's got their favorite models, whether it's the stock to flow from last time, the power law. Well, even if you look at where we're currently at, right? The 117,000, the upper band of the power law still has us at 513K. Look, that's not me saying that, right? That's Giovanni. That's all of your guys' favorite models that you have plugged in here. So having us double really quickly is not out of the realm of possibilities, right? I mean, we've seen Bitcoin in its bull run get very near those upper bands, and it hasn't reached even close to the top of the upper band. It hasn't even gotten over the green line just yet. So with the power law saying that, now let's look at another one of everybody's favorite, right? The stock to flow. This was last time. We had it at 108. Really, with the stock to flow, it says it should be at 325K, nearly 326K, literally at this same point in time. And so what did Anthony Pompliano say during that clip, right? That there's going to be a lot of Bitcoin getting scooped up and very quickly, right? The amount of Bitcoin that's getting mined is very, very low here, right? Like the amount of Bitcoin that is available, it's getting scooped up at a rapid rate. And for those of you guys who keep coming time and time again to these live streams, know that I keep showing this chart because of just how much Bitcoin is getting taken off exchanges. Right now, currently, we have 2.12 million Bitcoin left on exchanges, and that is happening quickly. And Anthony Pompliano in this clip as well talked a little bit more about that here. So let's go.
Or maybe Bitcoin on exchanges, those numbers are going down. And so naturally, price will have to readjust upwards because people don't want to sell their Bitcoin at $107,000, $108,000. This has been the story of Bitcoin for 15 years now, is Bitcoin's price has got to go up to convince some people to sell to the new people who want to buy the Bitcoin.
So he's lining out how OTC desks and the Bitcoin on exchanges is just rapidly decreasing. There's really no question about that, right? Everybody can see that. It's publicly on the ledgers. But what we're also seeing is the amount of Bitcoin getting scooped up now and the amount of FOMO that comes with these new price discoveries, as everybody is describing it, is astronomical. The IBIT, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, is now the fastest growing Bitcoin ETF or ETF in general ever. And it now has 80 billion assets under management, and it holds over 700,000 Bitcoin, right? Look at that. It holds more than MicroStrategy. And we're going to get into all of these Bitcoin companies coming online as well here in a minute, because obviously Anthony Pompliano has started his own Bitcoin company that is essentially a Bitcoin treasury company. All he's doing is buying Bitcoin. But with that, man, I mean, these ETFs are still humming along. BlackRock's iShares IBIT Bitcoin ETF reached that high, and in just 18 months since that launch, it accumulated 700,000 Bitcoin, right? So in 2 years, it's on pace to essentially get 1 million Bitcoin, just under that, right? So that would be nearly, 5% of that overall supply. And that would happen in just 2 years time period, right? So these Bitcoin ETFs starting and then absolutely exploding is something that people should be keeping a very close eye on. The numbers are mind-boggling. On July 3rd, IBET held nearly 700,000 BTC, and just days later, the net inflow took it past that 700,000. By July 10th, it was at 706,000 BTC. And that all happens really quickly. I mean, look at this, right? When the price starts to go up, the amount of Bitcoin that BlackRock's IBET ETF explodes up as well. And what are we seeing? This is all okay. This was from, the November time period. And if you guys recall, not too long ago, right? In the November time period, what did we see there? Well, we saw this big shot up. Okay. So we see something similar. And then when we see the BlackRock ETF start to shoot up here late April, what do we see in that price? We see late April. Hey, look at these big giant green candles starting to skyrocket in flight, right? So this is all connected. When the amount of FOMO that comes on, people start buying rapidly, right? So even though I pointed out these models here before, I don't necessarily agree with the models, but as they say, right? I think Down Under Blues is actually even saying that in the chat. All models are wrong, but some are useful. So I think that a lot of people have been looking at these models and essentially saying, hey, you know what? Let's use this as a price discovery action, price action. Traditional finance is more inclined to look at these models because that's essentially what they're accustomed to. They're looking at assets and they'd like to model these assets, right? So these models, although I believe, like I said, they're going to be wrong in the future, they are all predicting that Bitcoin should be more than double right this second, at this very moment, right? Maybe the middle bound is just, a little bit higher for the power law, but it does have a lot of room to grow to potentially get over to nearly that 500,000 mark there. And so, with that, we're starting to see the sentiment rise up. 1.5 bullish comments for every bearish one, the highest sentiment ratio in 3 weeks. So look, a lot of people are starting to get more and more bullish here. And I think that the sentiment around it is really interesting because what are we seeing? Well, I mean, I'm showing you this to you guys literally every single day because more companies are coming online and buying more Bitcoin. And look at where Anthony Pompliano is. ProCap right here with nearly 5,000 Bitcoin. They literally just came about and now are the 13th ranked Bitcoin treasury company, right? And then what else do we have? We have other companies coming online like Nakamoto and others. And David Bailey just, memeing all these things into existence, essentially saying, hey, he is literally telling us we have 9 figures in cash sitting in escrow, just waiting to buy Bitcoin. And they're all experiencing this FOMO here. But what else is going to be very interesting is there's another catalyst here that I think not a lot of people in the Bitcoin space are extremely really talking about right now, right? Like everybody's saying, hey, there's all these Bitcoin companies, there's all this, there's all that. But I think the true catalyst is the global M2 money supply. And now I'm going to tell you guys here why I believe that whether the Fed cuts interest rates or not, Bitcoin's going to skyrocket in flight and absolutely take off. But there's some interesting news that we need to go over first. The Fed chair, Jerome Powell, Bill Plute, who is the director of Fannie and Freddie Mae, has essentially written this article and told us that, hey, you know what? Jerome Powell is inching towards resigning, which is very interesting, right? So what does this mean, right? Powell has been extremely, let's just call it resistant to Trump's policies, right? He plans to serve out the remainder. But what has he also said? He said that he's going to stay higher for longer. And Donald Trump has essentially been trying to kick him out since the beginning. And everybody knows this chart, right? When global M2 money supply increases, Bitcoin price follows. Now, what do we see right here, right? We see this big giant green candle in the global M2 money supply. And Jerome Powell has been resistant to cut those interest rates. And Donald Trump has been talking about a jumbo cut of like 300 basis points. So for those of you guys who are not familiar with those terms, 300 basis points is a 3 percentage point cut. Normally we see about 25 basis points, 50 basis points. We see these different, small percentages. We never see over a full percentage cut, especially in the United States. We've never seen that before. So Donald Trump is talking about a jumbo rate cut of 3 percentage points. Maybe this is the art of the deal, him really trying to, say, hey, we'll get 3, we'll settle for 1, or even we'll settle for 50. But regardless, Jerome Powell's been very resistant. And so he's been calling him out publicly. And the next FOMC meeting is literally in about 18 days, right? A little under 3 weeks. And the percent chance that the Fed cuts interest rates right now is 5.2%. Now, I don't know about you guys. If Jerome Powell resigns, I imagine that is going to go up dramatically because Donald Trump is going to put somebody in there who is going to cut interest rates and is going to essentially gain more and more and more traction in order to do that. But I think another interesting aspect of all of this is that when the Fed debt increases, Bitcoin price also increases, right? So when the Fed debt, when that is going up, Bitcoin price goes up. Now, shout out to Bitcoin Mag Pro. You guys can go, and I believe that you guys can go and sign up with the promo code Green Candle, save some money on that if you guys like. I'll have to double check on that. But what I think is interesting here is that there's 2 correlated aspects to all of this, right? The 2 correlated aspects are global M2 money supply increases. Well, Bitcoin prices increase because there's more liquidity. The other thing is that Americans use Bitcoin as a hedge against the dollar. So using that hedge against the dollar, well, the US debt increases and people flock to Bitcoin. So literally, if the Fed doesn't cut interest rates, Donald Trump has come out and said, hey, you know what? If the Fed doesn't cut interest rates, that's going to cost the US taxpayer billions of dollars because of all of this. So everybody and their mother in the Bitcoin space is screaming, hey, when interest rates cut, Bitcoin is going to absolutely explode. Well, I'm here to say not so fast, because if the US does not cut interest rates, Bitcoin's price will still follow suit because of the behavior of the investor following that. Because the US debt and every $1 trillion of debt in Trump's new big, beautiful bill is, quote, free advertising for Bitcoin. So Trump would increase spending, and then this $37 trillion worth of debt would continuing to tick up. And the Trump administration, now at odds with Elon and Doge, well, this free advertising for Bitcoin doesn't seem like it's anything out of the ordinary, right? So now we have literally, it does not matter what the Fed does. We're getting to an agnostic policy here where Bitcoin's number go up technology is going to work no matter what, because everybody is going to be flocking away from the dollar. Whether the Fed is honestly going to cut interest rates, well, hey, this global M2 money supply that we see in this chart here, well, that's going to keep going up. You see the upper bands here, that will keep increasing. Well, hey, if the Fed doesn't do that, well, you know what else we're going to see? We're going to see the Fed debt start to increase, right? So this is very interesting. And then, we've also got Pomp, the legend here, coming and talking about, hey, you know what? Bitcoin off exchanges off OTC desk is rapidly increasing. And now, why should we listen to Anthony Pompliano about this, right? He's just a podcaster. He's blowing hot air. No, no, no. He's this guy here, right? Because his crypto venture has bought 386 million in Bitcoin, right? They purchased this after announcing a plan of 1 billion to go public. And they did this very, very quickly. And look at what strategy has done too. I looked at this table here and I had to double check because I couldn't believe what I was looking at. If you look at these reported days of all their Bitcoin buys, literally since the beginning of this year, there's been 2 Mondays, literally just 2 Mondays, and we're over halfway through the year that Michael Saylor has not announced a Bitcoin buy. Just 2. Right? And then we got the ETFs buying 2.7 billion worth of Bitcoin just from the price action this week. So now we have global central banks potentially looking to cut interest rates. So they're increasing the global M2 money supply. Donald Trump talking about the Fed rate cut may be inching closer as the Fed meeting notes reveal a master class in indecision. So the Fed honestly has no idea what the hell they're doing, whether they're going to cut interest rates or not. The CME group is essentially saying, hey, they're not going to cut, but they're also talking about Powell potentially resigning through all of this. And then we're having the U.S. general public look at Bitcoin and Bitcoin ETFs. When the price goes up, the FOMO goes into the ETFs. And when the Fed does not cut interest rates and the debt goes up, people go into Bitcoin. And then when the Fed does cut interest rates and the global M2 money supply goes up, well, people go and buy Bitcoin. And then on top of it, we've got multiple companies coming in to buy Bitcoin and more of it. And we've already seen this. The gold ETFs, right? A lot of people compare the Bitcoin ETF and the gold ETF. Back and forth, back and forth. What is the difference? Well, they're both hard assets, right? We're going to get into a little bit more of this and why I think that this is going to continue here in just a minute. But I'd love to give you guys some free sats because I think the true power of Bitcoin is holding Bitcoin off an exchange, right? And so the exchange I work with is strictly non-custodial. You know why? Well, because I don't want you guys to run into the same risk that we saw last bull run, right? For those of you guys who weren't around, we had FTX, we had BlockFi, we had Celsius. We had all of these exchanges blow up because they were giving you yield. They were doing all of these other crazy things. But the Bitcoin Well, if you go to bitcoinwell.com/green candle, they will give you free sats. I'm going to give you free sats every time you come to a Green Candle live stream. So make sure you're smoking that like Cheech and Chong and hit the subscribe button with the bell notification so you know I'm going live. But if you go to bitcoinwell.com/green-candle, sign up, you could do this. And then you buy Bitcoin, you could also do this twice. So boom, 418 sats straight to your dome piece. But if you guys are missing some of that, right? Maybe I was a little too quick here. If you guys get this, right? 418 sats. If you missed out, you could go to bitcoinwell.com/green-candle, sign up here today. That's where you'll get 500 Wishing Well tokens. Or you could go to Bitcoin Well Infinite and you could buy 50K smackers worth. That's not even half a Bitcoin anymore. And I don't think that'll ever be half a Bitcoin again. So make sure you guys do that ASAP like Rocky. But I know that this can be a daunting task. So this is why I've partnered up with my boys over at the Bitcoin Way. A lot of people say I look like a funeral director in here. Maybe I'm directing the death of fiat. But go to thebitcoinway.com/green-candle. They literally help you up with any self-sovereignty aspect, whether you want to run a Bitcoin node, get your Bitcoin off exchange, set up multi-sig, get a Plan B passport, you name it. They can help you out. You could book a consultation. They've literally got full days around the clock. You could go from 1 a.m. to 6 p.m. here. Oh, my birthday is the 23rd. So make sure you guys are going wish me a happy birthday when that comes along. I want you guys, all I want for my birthday is for you guys to subscribe to the channel and come to these live streams. But if you want to set up an appointment with Bitcoin Way on my birthday, they've literally got 12 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. open right now. So go ahead and do that, because what we are seeing, guys, is the potential of Bitcoin ETFs just absolutely skyrocketing, right? Down Under Blues is saying the Fed knows exactly what they're doing. They're just as corrupt. And yes, I am saying that all the Bitcoin, buy it all now, because Bitcoin will only keep up going in value. I agree with you. Dingo Booty saying Bitcoin is the way. Ooh, Brent, I like this one. 440K by Christmas. Potentially. Ninja, what's going on? Midas, Robert, all these great guys in the chat. Keep spamming it, because we're going to see some green candles here, because the IBET Bitcoin ETF, I mean, it's incredible to see what this is going on, what happens with these ETFs, because the amount of Bitcoin under management, these guys, it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And it's like, it's honestly incredible how closely this aligns with this price chart here. Unfortunately, with TradingView, I can't do the 18 months. Maybe I could do that if I was a little bit better at working this thing. But I mean, essentially, if you overlay this with the start of the IBET Bitcoin ETF, the buying is almost lines up directly, right? Of course, at the beginning, there was a lot of initial demand. So maybe if you cut out this part here, the initial demand where there was a lot of money on the sidelines. But hey, there's still a ton of money on the sidelines here, and that's increasing over time. And Pomp has said it, right? That historically, 3 out of the last 4 times Bitcoin hit an all-time high, it doubled within 18 days. Now, I'm not saying that Bitcoin is going to double here in the next 2 weeks, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does, because of the amount of pent-up demand. And, I'm not one to really look at these models and say, hey, these are gospel. We should all be looking at these things. We should all be, really involved with this, utilizing this to schedule your buys. No. I don't think that that's the case at all. What I do believe is that these models can be used and are used by some people. Look, I don't necessarily believe, like I said, but I think a lot of people use these things, especially traditional finance, to get in with it, right? And what I also believe is that a lot of people, are not necessarily even in on Bitcoin just yet. I think that, if we're looking at Bitcoin and saying, hey, let's get up this tweet from my friend over at Nico at Simply Bitcoin. If I could find his Twitter, I know it's not it's Bitvolt. There it is. My friend over here, right? This is not an all-time high feeling. Retail is still asleep. The Bitcoin, the search term, right? It's ticking up a little bit, but it's still not anywhere near where we should be if we're at an all-time high. So the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges is going low, and the amount of Bitcoin on OTC desks is going low. This is going down. Bitcoin's price is going up, and retail is still asleep. Retail is not even here yet. And the interesting aspect is that we've seen retail essentially drive the last few cycles. So, like I said, 3 out of the 4, once Bitcoin hit an all-time high, hey, Bitcoin skyrocketed in flight. But outside of that, now we have more FOMO money on the sidelines, where now we have governments really starting to take a look at it, right? We've had Scott Bessent and others come in and say that they want to buy as much Bitcoin as possible, right? I mean, they've even joked and said they want to buy more than Bitcoin's actual total supply. Obviously, that was tongue in cheek, But who knows? Maybe they don't necessarily know as much about Bitcoin as they like to put off. But either way, I think it's interesting that this is the way. And the amount of Bitcoin that gets bought up, right, based on the M2 money supply increasing, and then also based on the Fed debt increasing. I mean, the big, beautiful bill, all these people, it's not just me saying it. The big, beautiful bill is free advertising for Bitcoin because their widely debated big, beautiful bill keeps on moving. It'll be the long-term beneficiary, right? Experts suggest the bill's projected impact on government spending, inflation, in the US dollar could drive a shift towards Bitcoin as investors look for alternative stores of value. And this chart here is case in point to that, right? Once the Fed's debt starts to increase, everybody's going to start to lose more faith in the dollar. Now, I see that this is going to start to increase and start to skyrocket. I think adoption is really going to take off here. So you guys be sure to be smoking that like Cheech and Chong and hitting that subscribe button, telling a friend to tell a friend, because I'm giving you guys free sats every time you come here. So thank you guys all for joining. We've got nearly 200 of you guys across X and YouTube. So I want to see more of you guys here because as Down Under Blues is saying, we haven't seen anything yet. True Bitcoiners know. I agree with him. So I want to see more of you guys in the chat here going forward. And I'll catch you guys all at the next one.